quick they've got a $5 fine. That's an interesting approach. Hey, you come on the show, you get on earlier than Dave is on, because Dave's normally late, or you get a $5 fine. That's a way to encourage listeners.
Well, it's kind of like a negative reinforcement thing. Like we offer our boundless wisdom for free, but if you don't want to take it, we'll just have to punish you.
Oh, okay. So that's going to make us quite rich, actually. You think about it. The rest of the world doesn't listen, except for our few thousand local.
Well, you can pay us in Bitcoin.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah, it would make us great quick, and you can pay us in Bitcoin too.
Yeah. Okay.
It's kind of like a carbon tax. It's our wisdom. Our wisdom on this radio is kind of like a carbon tax. Like if
wisdom costs nothing,
you're going to get charged for it, and we'll give you back the money later. Oh yes, the check is in the mail.
No, wisdom costs nothing. Ignoring it is expensive.
Yes, quite right.
Okay.
It's the wisdom tanks.
Yeah, actually, that's not a bad. The wisdom. Yeah. Okay. We have to set up a think tank called the Wisdom Tank.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah. Okay. So, oil and gas lobby group is saying that emissions cap could cost the sector $75 billion. I'm kind of not convinced by this article. Not convinced by their argument.
Well, this is their side of it. Remember, this has been happening for a while now.
Yeah.
Where Canada is finding it difficult to meet its emissions targets. So it's going to come down on oil and gas production. And the government says, well, yeah, you're going to have to cut down. These are the thresholds that you're going to have to meet. And the province of Alberta, Saskatchewan, and the industries there are saying, if you do that, the only way to reach that plateau or those levels of emissions reduction is you're going to have to reduce production, which is not supposed to be the way it happens. It's supposed to be you're supposed to increase production and go along what you normally do and find ways of reducing emissions. But if the government has a hard line where it says the emissions can't go any further than this, the only way of meeting those emission targets is to shut down oil production or reduce oil production or invest less in oil and gas production. These are the two opposing sides. The government wants these emissions to come under effect. They see that the oil sands are the worst, one of the worst offenders in Canada, and conventional, but they also want conventional drilling that is not the tar sands type drilling to increase emissions control. Right now, when Canada has had investment rushing out of it, where Canadian and American investment is actually turning to the United States in a big way, where there are less regulations of this kind, the investments are going to go there. That is the argument by the province and the industry. What are you doing? They're saying the only way to meet those targets is reduce or limit production. That kicks us out of the oil market. It stops people from coming here and investing in our oil fields, which we sorely need for jobs. Danielle Smith says that all kinds of jobs will be lost otherwise. Hello, Mike. Hello, Chris. Metaphysical Mike.
Yeah, Daniel Smith is, of course, trying to protect the oil patch and the jobs up there. And it's, as Premier of Alberta, of course she is.
Yes, she's made this argument for quite some time. And also she says that the kind of imposition of these regulations that the government is trying to impose on them is beyond the scope of the federal government.
Yeah.
She says it's beyond that this is largely provincial jurisdiction. Get your nose out of our business.
Jurisdiction, yeah. And Randy West, good morning to you as well. Right.
Hi, Randy. How's it going, man?
Yeah. And Mike basically is saying, okay, let's face it, oil should be our country, should be for our country rather than go to others.
This is a very difficult situation because of the refining capabilities of the kinds of oils we have here. I'll make an analogy into the United States. We make a certain kind of oil. We have conventional stuff, that oil wells that tap into reserves underneath, and of course we have the oil sands where we're converting the amount of oil that's locked up in the sands into oil. We only have the refining capabilities of certain kinds of oil and gas, or not gas, but oil. In the United States, when our buddy Donald J. Trump down there says drill, 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 what that actually means is they're going to drill for more oil, but that oil that they drill for is going to have to go offshore to be refined somewhere else, because North America doesn't have the capabilities of refining that kind of oil. So what it does is basically it trades oil. It trades its oil for other oil that it can refine. So it sends the oil that has.
It's the same with us. We're doing exactly the same, right? We're selling it to be refined somewhere else, and then it comes, and then we buy it back, if we buy it back.
Well, it's a little bit different. Canada can send a lot of oil and gas to the United States, but I'm talking about the type of oil and the refining capabilities. So when the United States drills that oil, it hasn't got the capacity to refine that kind of oil. All the brand new wells, it doesn't have that kind of capacity. So what it does is it fills up a tanker, sends it somewhere where that can be refined, but then fills up another tanker of oil from somewhere else. It kind of trades tanker ships, basically. You take this oil because you can refine it. We can't. Well, we'll take your oil and we'll refine it. Refine that oil because we have refineries that can take care of that. So that's kind of largely what's going to happen if drill.
That adds to the expense of the oil, of course, because that means that you have to ship this, each shipload off to another country and import a shipload.
Yeah, it's a little bit awkward. It's a little bit awkward. So you trade one tanker for another tanker of oil. Here, I can't refine this oil, but you can. So I'll give that to you. And I'll trade it for a tanker full of oil that you've got that we can refine.
Yeah.
So this is part of the problems that we're going to be facing, and what the Alberta government and the oil and gas industry sees is regulations that will stop the kind of investment we need to continue exporting and developing and refining oil here. So that's the biggest crunch. I think that, and I think that is a portion of that attitude is sort of beneficial for Canadians, because we really seriously don't want a federal government intruding into provincial politics. The reason why, because we like to run our own things here. This is our backyard. Stick your nose out.
Yeah.
So that's one thing. Of course, the Western province would balk, and so would we here in Ontario if the feds came in and says, we don't like the way you're mining, so you got to do it our way. And the industry and the province has said it has very good chances of reaching the emission goals, but a little later, by 2040 instead of 2030 or something like that. I think it's actually 2050, but it has to, without losing production and without losing our place in the marketplace.
Yeah.
We have
And
a world that's going to use X amount of carbon fuels for the next 50 years, and what the Western provinces want to do is maximize the amount of profit they can get out of there. Do not lose position in the oil exports or selling oil because of stringent regulations that will reduce our ability to produce and sell that oil. And because oil and gas is responsible for 11% of our GDP, that's pretty important.
yeah, and okay, there's two ways to approach this. One, you could take the approach of, well, she's just protecting the oil and gas lobby. She's, Premier Smith is, focused in on the needs of the oil and gas lobby, and it's easy to say we can do this by 2040 or 2050 and have zero intent to do it, or you could take that as completely genuine.
Well, I think there's probably elements of both. I think as a premier, the number one thing, if I was the premier, if you were the premier, if any of our listeners were the premier, the number one thing we want is economic viability for our province.
Absolutely, we do. Absolutely, we do.
Yes. And economic viability means prosperity. It also means jobs. The last thing you want to do is start putting people out of work, which she claims would happen if these regulations come in and stifle the investment. And that's the biggest thing here, stifling of investment. Investments will look to Canada and say there's just too much regulatory red tape to get a return on our investment as quickly as it would in the United States or Mexico or wherever oil is produced.
Yeah.
However, if they feel that investment in Canadian oil will pay off, and there will be enough progress on the carbon capture to keep it under the radar, then that's perfect, right? Okay, they're doing what they're supposed to do. They're reducing carbon output technologically, so they're under the radar. People are happy with the reductions in carbon, and the government's not sticking their nose in and layering another layer of bureaucracy on top of industry. And Canada sorely needs that investment, as we keep finding out every couple of months or so. We talk about our production levels in this country and how investment is leaving the country rather than coming into it.
Okay, you got a couple of comments. Mike is saying, I think our country should reassess how we allow our natural resources to be used. It should be made in Canada for Canada. Then only then would the rest of the world get it. And further, if you want to sell a product in Canada, 65% should be made in Canada. Then you always have work.
Those are very good. Those are very good things, and I'm quite upset by Quebec, basically, for not allowing an oil pipeline through its province. That stifled the transportation of Canadian oil out east. Yeah. So 30% of our country is supplied by foreign oil, and we export a lot of our oil. It seems like madness to me that we have oil facilities to have pipelines to take them to the east to refineries, but Quebec refuses to have a pipeline go across its territory. Yeah. So that inhibits Canada from being able to use its own oil. Okay, right? What happens is a big tanker from Saudi Arabia comes to Irving refineries out east.
Yep. Okay, we've also got a comment from Randy West saying exporting not the be all and end all of any economy. We have learned that made in China means we can afford it, but it also means we have no jobs ourselves. To earn money in order to afford even made in China trade, particularly in abilities, is far different than tariffs.
Yeah, there has to be a balance. There has to be a balance. And what has happened in the amazing rise of China as an industrial power is because of Western capitalist investment. They had no means by which to create those industries that now flood our that produce products that flood our shelves. Basically, it was Western investment that went there. It was Western capital know-how and expertise when they moved factories from here over there. Now that is put the balance out of kilter. So we owe China more than they owe us. So the balance is a good thing. However, when you start trade balance is all important, and countries stress over this all kinds of ways. And
they do. Yeah, they do. Right. Okay, so Randy also continues, not all investment is kind to us. Look at the 407. What seemed like a good idea at the time has robbed us back several thousand times over.
Yeah, that's because of the Ontario government. During the Ray years, they had some very unfortunate times because of a recession that was the worst one until the 2008 recession. The Ontario government had spent poorly and had managed the economy poorly by trying to spend its way out of a recession, which didn't work. And it put the province of Ontario in a very bad place where our credit rating was reduced to a AA standards and our interest rates went way up. Harris thought, well, a quick fix for this is to sell the 407, get a bunch of money, and pay off our debts, kind of get our credit rating back up. By modern standards, when we look back at that, we see that it wasn't such a good deal for Ontario. But that's from here looking back.
Yeah.
And so there's a particular case where we made a capital investment. But if the government, if the Canadian or Ontario government wherewithal had been any better, it would have been a public road. So there are risks when you make capital investments without having.
Here's a question for you. Many of the interstate highways in the United States actually are toll roads anyway, aren't they? So, you're going on roads like the 401, the 40, the 407, the QEW. When you're out of the main industrial areas, when you're going between larger cities, the toll system kicks in.
Yeah, but they're not crushing tolls like the 407.
No, I know that. Yeah, I know that. But you see, for example, if you were driving around that same road and you're in the Philadelphia area, for example, there's no tolls within that metropolitan area. But as soon as you go out and you're heading to Pittsburgh or something, that's when there's tolls applied.
Yes, well, because it's a different system. The roads that are built in any city or municipality are paid for by the taxes of the people who live there for their use. So it is thought to be beneficial for everybody to have roads, because even if you don't have a car, you're going to be on a bus, or things are going to be delivered to you. So the infrastructure is very important. The transportation infrastructure availability is very important. Roads, streets, bridges, and so on. But when you jump on an interstate there, then you are asked to pay for that because that is the state, and the state wants to keep its taxes down. So it's going to charge anybody that uses that interstate. If you don't use that interstate, you're not charged. If you don't require that, in their mind is people who use it have to pay for it, but there's going to be scads and scads of people that never use it. Why should they pay for it? Only those who use it should pay for it. That's sort of the idea.
But that also goes back into paying for new roads, of course. Yeah.
Yeah.
But Randy well, that's the argument anyway.
Anyway, robbery. Good one. Good one, Randy.
Right. And I think he's talking about our 407 rather than the American highway. But
for anyone that can't see that, says Randy West says, yes, but 50 cents is a toll, and $175 one way is highway robbery, pun intended.
Yes. Thank you, Randy. Absolutely brilliant. Yep, I love it. Okay. Anything else on that?
Not much really. It's just that I I I really feel that yes, we have an environmental crisis and we have to get a grip of it. But at the same time, we have an economy, and the world demands is going to demand a lot of oil for the next 50 years, and we should get our fair share of the money that comes from that. And if we overregulate our oil and gas industry, that will stifle investment, and we will be, instead of where we stand as an exporter, keep getting reduced and reduced. That means less money coming into the country. There's nothing we can do about the fact that oil and gas will have to be used for at least the next 50 years. What we can do is reduce our reliance on that in our cars, our houses, and all those other things, and develop technology that reduces emissions, etc. But at the same time, we have to have economic wherewithal to pay for those kind of changes, and that comes with money.
Well, from the province or from any state, come to that matter, you've got to have the economic wherewithal and the investment in industry, and not just from the state, but you've got to have that economic wherewithal within any state.
And any government that says, well, we have to do these measures and it's just too bad, we'll have to reduce oil output. If they really did want to suddenly reduce the amount of emissions that Canada makes, it would drop the tariffs on Chinese electric cars. Chinese electric cars can come into this country. You can buy a brand new one for $12,000, and immediately you are putting out a lot less emissions, aren't you? Especially in Ontario. So if the government was really, really fixed on that idea, that's what they would do. But they won't do that, will they? Because it will harm our economy. And I think the same argument goes out west. Don't harm the economy.
Yep, absolutely. All right. So October 7th is a plate that supposedly, allegedly, was about the Hamas attack in Israel, and they basically it was allowed to be bought, and then Ontario withdrew that plate.
Yeah, I don't know how it ever got out, and no one noticed it before it got out. So what happens here is they're talking about personalized Ontario license plates.
But October 7th is, if you were celebrating, I'm going to take the innocent way about this. And but my baby was born on October 7th, or I was born on October 7th.
Yeah, you could put October 12th because that was the day of the Battle of Queenston Heights, because you think it's an important time or whatever. But this can't happen because of the way in which it would be it would be perceived. Now, anybody in the right mind should never put October 7th on their license plates because of how that is perceived. I mean, that was a terrible day in history, October 7th. And it precipitated other horrible days ever since then, day after day after day, in Gaza, where they're crushing and destroying a whole civilization right there. October 7th means a lot. It means the day that started, and it also means the day that it continued. It's insulting to some people. It's for me, if I see it's kind of distressing, because it brings to mind all the suffering that's being happened.
I grant that. I grant that. Yeah, I grant that. I understand. I know. I was portraying the cynical viewpoint. But again, Well,
you could do it different. If it's October 7th, you could your baby was born on October 7th, so you could put 24/10/07. And that would be the same thing, October 7th. And that might even, as long as the 2-4 was there, it would be okay.
Yeah.
Because if it was just 10-7, everybody would think, oh, there it is, October 7th.
Or if you were celebrating your own birthday, 65-10-7. Or something like that, you know.
Yeah. Well, since I'm only 49 years old, I can't even do the math now. I forget every year for over 20 years now, well, about 20 some years now, I'm 22, I think it was years now that I've been 49 years old, and it makes it difficult for me to do the math to figure out when I was born. And I just decided I'm not going to be any more than 49.
Yeah,
a good one would be 42 on your license plate. That's from Douglas Adams in Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. The answer to all things in the universe, 42.
Yeah, but you don't think you're going to? I don't think you're going to get that one. It's already been taken.
Oh God! I every time I think of that, I laugh because I remember reading the book, and of course these mice. The Earth was actually just a giant computer to determine what was the meaning of the universe. And after years and years,
let me correct you there. It was a giant computer to determine the question to which the ultimate answer is 42.
I just love that. I love that. Every time I hear it, I love it. Okay, go ahead.
So among the other plates that have been blocked last year include sexual references, references to law enforcement, references to politics or signatories, like the Crown, license plates with religious references or words linked to drugs and alcohol are also not permitted, nor are requests that include violence or criminal activity.
So there you go. You figure, well, okay, let's give the Ontario citizens a chance to personalize their license plates. Wouldn't that be cool? And many people indulge in that. They think that's a good idea. But then you always get the idiots that abuse the system.
Yeah, always get the idiots that abuse the system.
I don't think they can keep up, though. Like, for instance, slang and meaning. Like if I put M13 on my plate, that means I'd be a marijuana dealer because 13 because 13 is M is the 13th letter of the alphabet. You know, so would anybody pick that up? I don't know. And these terminologies change all the time. There's always new slang or new signals. Will they be able to keep up?
Okay, so here's another question for you. Had you bought October 7, back, let's say 20 years ago, 25 years ago, 30 years ago, right? And you still had October 7, wouldn't have the same meaning, would it?
No, but because it's insulting to so many people, or distressing to so many people, they may ask you to take it off. It would be just like the same thing if you had a personalized license plate back in 1936 and it had a swastika on it. The swastika was a good symbol back then. We had hockey teams called swastikas. We had a town called swastika, but they would be asked to remove it. And you couldn't, if you had it in personalized license plate in 1936, you wouldn't have that same personalized today or anywhere after or during the war.
Yeah.
Even if you were a Hindu, let's say if you were a Hindu, where a Hindu or a Buddhist, where the swastika is a holy symbol, you couldn't put it on your plate here. You could put it on your plate in India, but you couldn't put it on your plate here because of the meaning of that symbol, and that will carry on for another 100 years, I'm sure.
Maybe more. You know, it's going to be a long time before that symbol gets back its religious significance.
Well, yeah, it carries on. You see it all over the place in the East. I saw it in India. As a matter of fact, one of the most unusual things I saw in India was a temple with, and it had a ring of bricking around it as part of the ornament. And it had a swastika and a Star of David and a swastika and a Star of David. Right. But I thought that was so unusual.
Yeah.
Because both of those symbols do not mean what they like. The Star of David there was not the Star of David. It was just that it's a very simple old symbol that was used by many cultures. And so was the swastika.
Yeah, and there was a swastika that was on a Hindu temple in Britain, and then a local press took up this article about why it shouldn't be on there. They didn't, not in any of that article did they point out the fact that it was a religious symbol in Hinduism.
Yeah, well, you remember there's a temple with a big giant jade Buddha in it on right on River Road there, close to the lower bridge, and it was exposed. It was outside, and the Buddha had a swastika right in the middle of its chest, and I'm sure that would have been offensive to a lot of different people, even our vets, even any of our old vets that were still around, but certainly to the Jewish community, and yet it's pretty hard to factor that back and forth, saying, well, this is a religious symbol. It means peace, love, and everything, not to what those people, Jewish people, might think.
I know. Yeah, exactly. It's a symbol that goes down as a horrific symbol in all of history anyway. So, okay. Okay, we got a couple of comments on that one. We have right to a free press where the difference published is a published license. Where's the difference with a published license plate? Sometimes you have to keep your hate for yourself to yourself. Yeah.
Well, there's with freedom of any kind of thing, press or expression, there are responsibilities that come with that.
Yeah. Okay. 81 on a plate is got banned apparently.
I heard that 881 Slick got banned.
My vanity plate would read "For Nick You."
For Nick ate you.
For Nick ate you. Yeah, I'm sorry. The 8 was covered up on my thing. Yeah.
And okay, so that's the rub there, and I'm glad I don't understand how they were able to issue October 7th without somebody noticing it, but I guess it just goes through digital process, and it just created, and somebody hands it to somebody over the counter, and nobody really kind of looks at it. But
in order to get a plate, it's going to take a couple of weeks anyway, because if you go into the plate place and you say, "Hey, I want my number plate, Dave Wheels," right? And they look it up and they go, "Yeah, that's available." And you go, "When will I get it?" It's going to take a couple of weeks before you get it. So you'd think they'd have the time in the meantime to at least punch that up the chain while they're getting it made, right?
I would never put wheels on my license plate because police will be pulling me over all the time and asking me for my autograph.
Yeah, that's fine. Okay.
I don't want to. I really don't want to give a signal to the paparazzi. There he is. Let's go.
Okay. Ontario is going to cracks down on acts of stolen valor. This is an interesting one because the Ontario government is condemning so-called stolen valor, false claims of military service, and at the same time introducing a new award for veterans. So they're doing an act is called the Honouring Veterans Act 2024, and it was expand the recognition to living veterans for their service contribution in addition to those who gave their lives in service of the country. The act is it condemns actions that disrespect veterans and making false claims of military service, rank, or medals received.
Yeah, this is, I'm not a religious man, but stolen valor is the closest I can think of a sacrilegious act, really. You're trying to imply that you serve the country in any capacity, even if you're a mechanic fixing military cars or whatever. There's a level of respect you get because you're serving your country. You are there.
And it's not just military service. It was weird. I'd never really thought about this until I was talking with an American friend of mine who published a magazine, and I don't know why he called me, but he called me on one day and he said, "I've had this article from this person and claiming certain things that he did in the military." And I'm like, for whatever reason, he said I couldn't publish it because I didn't feel right. And then I found the guy wasn't actually ever in the military. He was claiming to be a colonel or something like that, a low-ranking officer,
like Colonel Parker, who ran Elvis's career into the ground.
Well, yeah. That's a different matter. That's a different matter entirely. And he was of course talking about how he couldn't stand people who claim they're in the military, because he said it to him. It's the fact that people were in the military; they should be recognized for that service. And I couldn't disagree with anything that he was saying. But I also then start to think about this, is that I've seen also claims to be in other industries where people have claimed certain things that they've gotten through industry where they have not.
Well, yes, there is all kinds of false stolen valor of one kind or another. People lie about what kind of accreditation they have at universities, all kinds of things like that. But in order to advance your cause, your own personal credibility by stealing valor, really is like unconscionable, really. But people do it because it might open a door for them. They could knock on the door and say, you know what, I want this job, and what is your job? What is your experiences? Well, I did a stint with the military over there in Afghanistan, and so right away you get a sympathetic ear. You can also try to say that you're a hero some other way, but that stolen valor, I think they should come down hard on anyone like that, because it's not funny, and it is not there for anybody to use. You can lie about your credentials; you'll have to pay that price. But to lie about being a person who served in the military, no. Those
actually, it's interesting. Unlawful use of military uniforms or certificates is a criminal offence under Section 419 of the Criminal Code of Canada, and basically, if they wear a uniform, and that includes people who, without lawful authority, wear a uniform of Canadian Forces or other naval, Air Force, or a uniform that is so similar to a uniform of those services that they're likely to be mistaken therefore. Wearing distinctive marks relating to wounds received in service of war or military medals, etc., has in possession a certificate of discharge, certificate of release, statement of service, or identity card for the Canadian Forces or any other naval, army, or air force that has not been issued and does not belong to them, right? And has in possession a commission or warrant or certificate of discharge, certificate of release, statement of service, identity card, and person who of to a person, an officer or a person who has been in the military?
Well, I think probably a lot of con men,
Yeah,
con artists would use the military. You could see how they could get around. They could start a little charity. They could set up their own little Salvation Army type of kettle, and get a bunch of money that way. Could go around and try to elicit donations for veterans or anything else. So yeah, it's important that stolen valor be chased down, but there has to be vigorous. It has to be done vigorously, because I think it's just too easily to be stolen. I don't know how to break it, but I think it's shameful. But then a con artist has no shame, so there you go.
yeah, and that's a part of the problem. Con artists have got no shame. At the end of the day.
Well, I got a good solution. Anyone doing stolen valor will have to face a firing squad. That'll clean it up real quick.
By the military.
Yes, by the military. Yeah. Oh,
yeah.
Okay. Where'd you get that medal? Okay, strap them up against the wall, boys. Let's get them.
Okay.
Okay. Wait. That's my Olympic medal. That's
my. Yeah. Like I believe that you got an Olympic medal.
Yeah. Well, that would be another kind of stolen thing, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it's a stolen valor as well, in a way. Yeah. Okay. Provincial engineers alleging that the government is unlawfully locking them out of work. So they've been under negotiation for a little while, and they've actually had the right to go on strike since sometime in October. I think it was October 7th.
Yeah. Yeah. So this is the game. This is okay. This is the games that go on between employer and employees. The provincial engineers of Ontario, which includes surveyors, have pointed out that their wage rate is now below industry standard. So they are going to go on strike because they have the legal right to go on strike. So the kind of strike they chose was a rotating strike, where only certain of them would go off to the job site, particularly on Highway 413. They figured, well, this would put pressure on the Ontario government to negotiate. Well, the Ontario government has claimed that they have tried to negotiate a settlement, and what they are doing in return is barring those engineers, the ones that rotate off the job. They then bar them from coming back on the job, which then hurts them in the pocketbook because they will not be paid. So if they walked off the job, you could say, well, okay, the Ontario government won't pay them for that day, but then stops them from going back on the job. So stops them from, cuts them right out of the pay cycle.
So if your strike day was Tuesday, you can't get back to work on Wednesday,
Thursday, Friday. So that's the government's answer to the rotating strikes, and so the labor officials are going to have to rule on this. Is it fair to do that? Can the government then restrict these people from participating in the rotating strikes? And the government says, well, you're on strike, you're on strike. So if you do not show up for work, then don't expect to get back to work, because now you're barred. So it's kind of like a lockout. Yeah. So this is their strategy to make rotating strikes ineffective. But in the meantime, what it's done is it really does hurt those people who are on the rotating strikes, who are now completely banned. Well, now they're banned from getting a paycheck. So that the number one way in which employers or the government or the capitalist swine out there work against unions is to shut them out and stop paying them, because they figure that the average person cannot wait that long and hold back without getting money and financing. So big unions have a strike fund so they can last out the capitalist swine.
Well, the professional engineers,
the bourgeoisie, you know.
This professional engineers union is only 600 strong, so probably they don't have a strike fund.
No, they don't. But this is where unions are going bad. Basically, other unions should step in and consolidate with them. Other unions should then support them in their time of need right now to help them. This is where unionism is supposed to help happen, where other unions are supposed to back that union up so they can, if the other unions feel that they have a just right to do what they're doing, other unions around the province should start kicking it in and helping them out. Otherwise, what you do is, if you can't help these engineers financially, then it's going to weaken their union and their bargaining strength is going to be reduced. So this is where solidarity has to come in. And we saw a big problem with that solidarity down in the United States. And at a time when the unions started to lose a lot of strength is when the air traffic controllers in the United States went on strike during Reagan's time. They went on strike. They were legally allowed to go on strike, but he tossed them all out and brought military air traffic controllers in to replace them. And the rest of the unions in the United States were going to go on a general strike, but didn't because Reagan was very, very popular at the time. And that's the mistake they made. If they had a general strike, then those air traffic controllers would still be working today. Well, would have continued to work. As it was, they were pushed out and lost their jobs.
Yeah.
When Reagan brought in the military to do the air traffic controlling. So in this particular case, they only have 600 people, and I'd hope that if the other unions decide the cause is well and good, that they should show a little bit of solidarity and support them.
Well, actually, Randy's making the point that Solidarność in Poland was a perfect example about how labor sticks together and help each other.
Yeah, it can work. It can work. And as long as you don't ask for anything that isn't fair, then you're never going to get any kind of real pushback. But if you go on sale, go on strike and say, part of my agreement is I have a Rolls Royce and a driver to go to work every day. Well, of course, that's not going to work. But if you ask for fair compensation for the work you're doing,
I wanted that roller. I wanted that roller and a driver. Damn it! Why did you stop that one happening, Dave?
Yeah. So you can see how this has happened. If one man goes on strike at a steel mill and tries to confront the capitalist swine, he's not going to work, is he? But if everyone comes out and stops working, then that hurts the bottom line of the capitalist swine. So then they give you a share of the profits a little bit better.
Yeah, but again, one could also say, and I'm saying this in the nicest possible way, that you're a unionist swine, Dave.
No, I'm a union angel, divinely important, divinely appointed by the ghost of Karl Marx.
Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear.
Well, yes, I was a union guy. I was president of my union for 6 years. I was on the executive for 10. For the 25 years I was in that union, and I was a delegate often. I was a steward many times, and unions aren't perfect, but believe me, the capitalist swine is imperfect too. So the idea here is reasonable compensation for the jobs you do, and you cannot do that without some help. You have to have collective responsibilities, and that's up to you and your union to vote. I would really like to see a situation here where there's a union member on every board of directors, a union member that is hired, a CEO that's hired by the unions or compensated as well by the factory or industry owners, and put them on the board. Because then if you have a board of directors that's working for you, they can tell you, well, yeah, these are reasonable things that you can ask for. If you ask for more than that, you don't want to hurt the industry because you're going to want to work here. So if you ask for too much compensation, our product will be less competitive, that kind of thing. But if you don't ask for enough, you're going to lose your workforce because they're going to go other places, et cetera, et cetera. So the whole idea is to maintain the strength of that company so the workers have a consistent and steady source of income and not have to fear the unknown. What is the capital swine up to? Are they going to move this place to China? That kind of thing,
Yeah. Okay. Randy's saying I was union as well, right until the company management drove the company into bankruptcy and put 30,000 workers out permanently.
God, that's horrible. That's terrible. That's terrible. That's well. Anyway, I cannot see a big company. A small companies, they're a little bit different. You have a personal contact with your bosses and all that other stuff. But a larger company, or police or firefighters or professionals of any kind should actually be in a union because they need the protection of the whole.
Okay.
Against the capitalist swine.
Okay, Iran warns Israel and the US that retaliation as fighting continues.
I expect that now that Donald J. Trump has won a resounding victory in his election, that there will be some backdoor deals going on with Iran and Trump. The United States doesn't really want to get into it with Iran. Iran doesn't want to get into it with the U.S. The one real problem here is a continuous slaughter of people in Gaza. So I think there might be some backdoor negotiations, and probably have already been, with someone from Iran and someone with the Trump jurisdiction. But Trump's people like Pompeo in the past have been horribly harsh and militaristic and unhuman in their solutions to American problems geopolitically. So I don't know. Iran may take a second thought at retaliation right now, but I don't know how much they can do that without looking too weak. Now, I'm very sure that the United States and Israel want a regime change in Iran. They want to foment resistance within the Iranian population. However, if the Khomeini and the Iranians look too weak, then that's another reason why you might get revolution. But one thing the Khomeini and them can do is direct the rage of the people away from themselves and onto what's happening in Gaza and Lebanon.
Yeah.
So there's, I don't know what the Khomeini is going to do, but I would think they are planning a massive retaliation, and it would come from the Houthis, from their from the counterparts in Syria and Iraq and Iran itself. If missiles came from all those areas and drones and stuff, they could do a lot of damage. But the United States, of course, would make sure that Israel have all the bombs they need and all the jets they need and all the Tomahawk missiles they need. So I don't know. You can't go tit for tat for too long. The U.S. has too many weapons.
Yeah.
But they have Russia as an ally now.
Ultimately,
and so you really don't want this escalating.
Yeah, and I don't know. I personally don't see much changing with Trump coming on board, or despite what he's promised. But we'll see. We'll see. I'm open to seeing where that goes.
Well, I hope that the one thing he does do, he doesn't see much advantage in wars. He sees it as a drain on the U.S. economy, on the U.S.
Absolutely.
bottom line. The forever wars that have been happening in Afghanistan, Iraq, Vietnam, you name them, they're these long drawn out wars that enrich the military industrial complex of the United States and other countries. One of the main exports of the industrial countries is weapons. Weapons is big money, and so if you are an investor in a weapons company, it's in your best interest to make sure that conflicts continue all around the world. But this one's just too big, and if Trump is, it is said of demagogues that they don't like war because there's too many things that could go wrong with a war. So demagogues, by and large, don't like war. Perhaps he's a demagogue, so perhaps that'll factor into this. And if any positive things come out of the Trump presidency, it may be the end of these egregious wars.
Oh, I hope you're right. I personally don't see it happening.
Well, I see the Ukrainian one being wrapped up pretty quick. I think they'll get something done there pretty quick because it is just a big sinkhole for American money.
Well,
as well as Gaza too, but not nearly as much.
I actually think that I can foresee with some of what I see in Ukraine, almost Ukraine being swallowed up in back into Russia.
I don't think that's going to happen. I think they're going to put up a kind of a DMZ line that they're going to. They may not officially. They'll have an armistice. They may not officially come to a peace deal. They may not officially accept the terms, and the Ukrainians will still claim the Donbasses that Russia's already taken, but have to leave them under Russian control, but officially claim them as their land and have a DMZ like they do in kind of like in Cyprus and in the Korean Peninsula.
Yeah, like Korea. Yeah.
So,
yeah, well, I can see that happening, but I can also it's been talked about the possibility of just granting Ukraine back over to Russia, but I'm not sure I like either. I'd prefer the demilitarized zone than any other solution.
Russia is never going to give up Korea or the Crimea Peninsula. Will never do that. Yeah. They've had their navy there for well over 200 years.
Yeah,
and they're not going to give that.
Yeah.
There is a Russian and Tartar population that is heavily Russified anyway. The Donbass on the east are Russified as well. So it's not going to be easy for those to go return to Ukraine. But I think they'll have some sort of armistice and some sort of DMZ, and it will stay unresolved, but at least the blood will stop letting.
Hopefully, a demilitarized zone is probably the best we can hope for right now.
I hope this whole thing stops.
It doesn't stop the issue because, like Korea, the issue is still, there is still plenty in the north that see South Korea as being theirs, and plenty in the south that see the North Korea as being theirs as well.
Yeah, so it's a war that never ended, but there's an armistice. But at least there's no bloodletting, and it's been like that for decades.
Yeah.
So we want that, if possible, we want that too. Because if you keep fighting, and even if Ukraine manages to take back some of this land, the amount of blood that will be let out of Ukraine and the amount of economic disaster that happens to Ukraine and how long it will take to get back on its feet, it may be worse than giving up the Eastern Donbasses, which were largely Russian anyway. I really don't see a good way out of this. I just want the blood to stop letting. I want the bleeding to end, the death. Death is not good. They're eating up their young men, both Russia and Ukraine. So something has to happen, even more so in Gaza. But maybe Trump can do something about this. I hope that he can.
Well, maybe also we need to actually tackle some of the other world war, other wars around the world. Right. Okay.
Yeah,
So
Sudan, Mali, all those places are, but the United States tries to stay out of those as much as possible because they are expensive to get involved. You take the Sudan thing, the UAE and the Saudi Arabians have picked opposite sides in that conflict, where the UAE will supply those in Darfur, and Saudi Arabia will supply the Rapid Defense Forces, which are really just the Janjaweed. It's a real mess, and I don't think any democracy wants to get involved in that because it's just too intangible. But in order, all you can do is really supply the humanitarian need when it can. But I don't know. It depends on how China is going to intercede in Africa as well. That's another big factor. And China, to many pundits, China is the biggest threat to the United States and the West right now. And their eyeballs focused on Taiwan.
And Karen is saying Canada has its own weapons factory.
Oh, yes, it does. And it makes money selling arms overseas, which doesn't feel too right to me. You're going to have to make weapons. You absolutely do. You have to manufacture weapons. Unfortunately, that's the way we are. Whether it's a pistol for our cops or a billy club for our cops, or if it's a rifle for our military. But unfortunately, about weapons, they are huge money, huge.
Yeah,
they make the suppliers very wealthy.
Oh, yeah, and I'd love to see an end to both these conflicts. Plus some of the other conflicts that have flared up in the most recent time as well.
Well, Gaza's got to stop. The Biden administration has been way too weak on that.
Oh, way too
weak. Like, they gave them 30 days to bring in more humanitarian aid, and they didn't. They opened up more gates, but didn't let any trucks in. Those people are starving there, so they're going to wait a whole 30 days before they're going to do anything about it. And I bet you they don't do anything about it.
Of course,
because they haven't done anything about any of the demands they've made on Israel up to now. They just keep snubbing them. And now that Gallant is being fired as defense minister, it's going to get worse. Because Gallant was looking for an end of this.
Yeah, and we'll come back to Gallant tomorrow, I think.
In any case, we here in this island called North America had better become aware that the globe is shrinking and shrinking and shrinking, that ballistic missiles can hit here, that we could get drawn into egregious wars. The biggest push that we should do is to limit warfare as much as possible, and then try to work on the justice or injustice that caused the war in the first place. That has to be okay. Thanks for the show, says Chris. Yeah, thanks for listening, Chris.
Yeah,
I hope you're a much wiser man that you've heard our preponderances.
Okay. So I think we'll leave it at that point.
Yes. And thanks everyone for participating and for listening to our show. And I hope it's thought-provoking.